Clarence E. Hill joins us now. And Clarence, welcome back. Thought you did some really fine work there in San Francisco. I'm sure you're happy and pleased to be home. Thanks for being with us today, sir.
Man, how you doing, man? Yeah, people think our job, and I'm not complaining about our job, but they think that going to the Super Bowl and hanging out all week and working all week is the time of your life, and it can be. But every job has its version of hell, and the travel
Yeah.
and you know and the things that come along with that, and so it's nice to sleep in your own bed.
Yeah, I can't say, and this is you're in a new role, so now you used to kind of swing through Radio Row, kind of while you were working on your stories and all, and now you kind of set up shop there, so it's a little different situation. But boy, I liked your interviews, man on the street type deal at the Pro Bowl. It looked like that access was pretty good there at the Pro Bowl. Was it a very relaxed type atmosphere and the reporters were just kind of basically just the players were out there. You just kind of walk up, visit with whoever you want. What was that situation like?
They gave us from 10 to 10:15. They cut off at 10:10 to go out there. It was free for all for 15 minutes one day.
It was wonderful access.
Okay, they just don't be misled. It was we got 10 to 15 minutes one day. Then they blew horns. They get off the field and get out. Like, come on. You guys are playing flag football. Stop it. This is not a real game. Nothing you're doing is serious. Nothing about the Pro Bowl is serious.
Was Micah Parsons sort of excited to see you? I mean, I assume y'all had a pretty good relationship from covering him from his time in Dallas. Was he pleased to see you? I noticed you ask him about his relationship with Jerry Jones, or when was the last time they talked? How was Micah functioning?
Well, Jerry calls him Michael. Calls him Michael. Don't know his name. Call him Michael. I think Micah, he's like, first of all, injured players don't go to the Pro Bowl, right? Injured people that are injured don't even travel to California. Pickle don't want to miss nothing. Mm-mm. He's at the Pro Bowl. He's hanging out with Dak, all the former Cowboys. Early had Packer teammates there. He was at Shannon Sharp's Super Bowl party with a crutch in his crutches. Of course, he did his, podcast from out there and had the Cowboys, a lot of players on. But yeah, we were good. But he kind of crashed the interview I was doing with Pickens. I mean, I wasn't necessarily, why don't you leave Micah alone? I wasn't trying to go get Micah. Micah came to me. I'm talking to Pickens, and Micah walks up into the interview. So I'm going if they give you a layup, I'm gonna take a layup. Okay, it was a layup. Mm-hmm. And so I started talking to Micah, and then I walked back over. And he turns. I said, "I know you want to talk, so let's talk." And so he did, and he opened up about his disappointment with the process. He loves being in Green Bay and loves the money he got, but he has regrets about the process. He clearly loves Dallas. He grew up a Dallas fan, and the whole family is Cowboy fans. Whole family still lives here. His family still, even this year, his mom and dad went to several Cowboy games when he was in Green Bay. And so, yeah, this is he got paid, but he'd rather be in Dallas.
Now, was that Shannon Sharp party? Was that the best party you attended? Would you say, in terms of was that the most fun? I heard the media party was not great. It was getting some poor reviews, at least from one of our young friends, Nick Harris. It did not meet his whatever standard he would have. I don't think he's ever been to one. He might have been to one Super Bowl before now.
Yeah. He doesn't have history of going, but I was with Nick, and it was not a good media party. It was at the EA Sports or whatever it was, and it was just not. They had us eating out of their kitchen, basically. Up in the kitchen. I mean, it was.
I bet Shannon was happy to see you. You've been on his show over the years, especially when he was back at Fox. Was that a well-attended and fun party? Did you get there Did you arrive fashionably late? How long did you stay at that one?
You got to bounce parties. I was at a couple of parties. I went to 2 parties that night, and I ended the night there. Uh, it was okay. It was not. I mean, I wouldn't say it was. It's one of the early parties during the week, and so it kind of the Super Bowl parties kind of build up. The best parties on the weekend, like Friday, Saturday, day before the game. You have the big, the old school Sports Illustrated party used to be one of the best parties, the Mexican party, and all those parties they have on the weekend. But it was solid. I mean, the party I liked best was the NFLPA VIP party, which was cool. And I go for the food, I go for the drinks, free food and free drinks. Okay, top shelf food, top shelf drinks. I don't care who's there.
I did like that Shaq one though that he hosted over like the Gucci mansion in South Beach that one time, and that was a pretty neat deal, as I recall. The George Pickens situation. I saw you comment on that. Did the Cowboys really need to release that the night before the Super Bowl or whenever that came out? I think we knew that was certainly a great possibility that they would put the tag, but I think your reaction, as I saw on Twitter, was kind of like sort of unnecessary. And I don't know if you were saying, I think you were saying that more about the Cowboys than you were about Schefter or anything like that. But what did you make of that? The Pickens decision.
Well, first of all, we all knew it was going to happen.
Correct.
It's not news, is it? Is it news at this point? Is that news? And I guess I'm getting jaded after all these years. But is it really news? And the Cowboys are going to franchise? Well, yeah, it's a placeholder. It's an administrative thing, so they can keep them out the market, so they can exclusively negotiate. Because if they didn't do it, then he'd go to the highest bidder, and he wouldn't be in Dallas. It's also an NFL mechanism to keep the money down, because he's not opening and negotiating with the entire market. You only negotiate with one team that keeps the money down, for sure. But why do we need that? We talked to Pickens. Pickens was all the rage all week. And it was Micah crashing my interview and Pickens saying, because Jerry says, because we got rid of Micah, we can sign these guys, right? So we got money for Pickens. Whoop, pay Pickens.
Yeah.
He don't want the franchise tag. Give him that Micah money, okay? Then you got everybody at the Pro Bowl trying to recruit Pickens. And then you got CD saying, stay away from my guy. No one's leaving and Pickens can have more money than me. First of all, we already knew that the franchise tag was coming. There was no such thing as recruiting. The Cowboys are not going to let him hit the market, right? So all this stuff was just a bunch of drama that got headlines all week. And this is another thing. They got drama and headlines the day before the Super Bowl. Then on Super Bowl Sunday, Ian Rappaport comes out. I don't know if you saw that, but said the Cowboys, would be open to trading Pickens or picks because they have a history of trading their stars. Now tell me, what history do the Cowboys have of trading their stars for picks other than Herschel Walker and Micah Parsons? Yeah. Show me all the time between Herschel Walker and Micah Parsons that they've traded their stars for picks.
It's not what they do. But since they just did it, I think I guess you just go, oh, now they have a history. Jerry Jones has a history of that.
And they did it because things broke down, because it got personal, because they got the butter over that, but it's not something they want to do. I mean, the bottom line is this. You hope the picks turn out to be Parsons. You hope picks turn out to be Pickens. When you got it in-house, you don't have to play the game and guess and hope you hit it right, because more often you're not going to hit it right. But, so it's just more, as we all know, Cowboys drama, and whether it's generated by the Cowboys, whether it's generated by media to get engagement based on the Cowboys, it is what it is.
Well, right? But I know what you're saying, but see, you work for newspapers for years. You feel the need when that is put out there, even though you're like, well, we knew this was going to happen. But the editors are like, you got to now go confirm it, or you got to go, report this yourself that he's going to expect it to get franchise, even though you probably tell your editors like, hey, man, this was always going to happen. So
you got to feed. I say you got to feed. It's the internet. It's not the paper. It's the internet now, and you got to feed the beast. And
Yeah, but I was talking to our former lives. Yeah, I was talking.
yeah, no, I'm just
Yeah,
saying, but the same thing. But you still have to do the same thing. So I know my guys in the morning news had to write a story about it, and you have to do
yes.
that. You have to feed the beast. And the newspaper, the internet is taking over, and so you need those clicks, you need those engagements, you need people coming to you for the source of information. But yes, and that's what we have to do. So yeah, it's just it's like something. This could have waited 2 days. It didn't have to be reported on Saturday or Sunday. It could have waited until Monday. It wasn't like it is what it was. But hey, it's the Cowboys.
Did you interview someone or meet someone during the week that you'd always wanted to talk to, or have you arrived now as a grizzled veteran where you're like, nah, I've met everybody I want to meet? Was there anybody that y'all got to interview or you sat down with that really stood out to you, that you either enjoyed the interview or you loved getting to meet somebody, even if it's just a non-athlete? Was there anything that stood out during the week of somebody you got to meet?
I'm primarily focused on Cowboys people, and so
Hmm.
most interviews are already. I don't think there's anybody I've met that I hadn't seen before. It was interesting to see, different comedians and different people that you run into on Radio Row, or they don't call it Radio Row anymore. They basically call it the media center, because it's not just radio. It's all the podcasters and content creators and everything else,
Yeah, yeah.
TV that come through there. But Sean Lee was doing media. I don't know if you remember Sean Lee with the Cowboys. He
Yeah,
never
yeah.
never did media when he was with the Cowboys, and used to come in like on Friday, like 10 minutes before the locker room closed, and he's in there doing doing media. It was just fun to deal. As you mess with him about doing media. It's interesting how people evolve and things change when you're no longer in the game and you have to sell stuff or whatever.
Mhm.
But I mean, just it's just a different people. It's the Super Bowl. People just don't understand the people that want to be connected with the NFL. They come to the Super Bowls, and it's so different than any other event or sport.
What was the buzz when I'm sure you talk to people and you continue to hear about Christian Parker, and I guess the hope is that the Cowboys have discovered the next Mike McDonald. Now, again, you could say, well, this just needs to be the first Christian Parker, but this was a rare thing with a primary play caller on defense winning a Super Bowl. In fact, I know you could say Belichick, but I think sometimes we didn't know who was calling the defense, right? But this was a big deal for a young guy who was Christian Parker's age when he became defensive coordinator for the Ravens about 3 or 4 years ago. What is your take on Christian Parker, the hire, and now this staff that he's putting together? Interesting to hear Jerry go, well, obviously I was getting this wrong and we needed to go a different direction. And so that's that.
It's always very interesting that he was getting it wrong. Um, what I like is the process. I don't know Christian Parker. I know everybody loves him, and he's a genius and a rising star, and everybody has raved about him, and the type of person he is. But I like the process. I go back to the press conference when they fired Matt Mosley, and I asked Jerry. I said, Jerry, Clarence Hill, DLLS, Jerry, are you going to let Brian Schottenheimer hire his own defense coordinator? You hired Matt Eberflus. You said you hired Matt Eberflus. Jerry said, I'm like Trump. I run Venezuela. I mean, I do what I want. We're going to do the things the same way we've been doing it. All these, it's always been a collective thing. No, it wasn't collective. You hired Mike Zimmer. You hired Matt Eberflus. Okay? Lo and behold, as we get through this process, it was Shoddy who was running point, bringing all these great coaches in to interview. You remember every coach that came in to interview got defense coordinator jobs, and everybody loves them. So I don't know anybody that doesn't like the guy they hired. And so the same thing we're hearing about Christian Parker, they're saying about Durante Jones and and Jim Leonard, and different, everybody said great things about all of them, and they love their hire. I like the process because the process that he used to hire defense coordinator, the same process they got him Clayton Adams as offense coordinator last year. Young, bright communicators, teachers, and you look at what Christian Parker's done, CP as they call him. CP, are you with me? Oh yeah. CP is bringing in more young coordinator. You didn't like my rap there, huh?
I did like. I just had it took me a second to realize what you were doing.
But CP is bringing a lot of young guys, and we don't know what he is, right? He's never called a defense. He never called plays in the game, but everybody loves him. He's young. Here's a guy who was a quality control coach 7 years ago, and 7 years later is the defense coordinator. That is a meteoric rise through the coaching ranks that generally doesn't happen for black coaches. And everybody loves CP and what he's done. And so you have to trust the process was good, the process was clean, that you're going to get the result. And so I like the process. And everybody I talked to, former Eagles, media people who dealt with Christian Parker, they love CP and they have high hopes for CP and think he's going to be a home run hire. The problem here is, and I'm glad you brought up Mike McDonald. Yeah, they're going to be like Mike McDonald. Mike McDonald got dogs. He got players. He got a group of junkyard dogs in that defense led by former Cowboy DeMarcus Lawrence, right?
Mm-hmm.
CP needs players. And if the Cowboys don't go out and get him difference makers on every level, it won't make a difference. We'll be blaming here. He wasn't ready. He was young. He wasn't ready. We'll be throwing him out like we did Matt Eberflus and Mike Zimmer because they didn't have players. And listen, I remember when we know Matt Eberflus when he was a young up-and-coming coach, and everybody raved about the type of coach he can be and the success he could have. But if you don't give him players, if you take away your best player a week before the season opener, it's not going to help you. And as much as we like CP, as much as the Cowboys like CP and think he's going to be a great coach, they got to find a way to get him some players in free agency in the draft because that defense is devoid of players and playmakers.
Well, they got some high-paid and pretty good defensive tackles. The Seahawks appear to have gotten great defensive linemen, and one of those was that a Longhorn I saw out there. It was Murphy.
Minnesota, of course, the Longhorn. He's the first-round pick.
Murphy. Yeah, I just wanted to give you a chance to brag on him a little bit.
First-round pick, local kid, DFW kid.
Yeah, in fact, DeSoto and Southlake Carroll were featured on TV going into the game, which was pretty cool. So, but they built that thing pretty quickly with first and second round picks and then free agency. It leads to this: the Patriots built a really good team that made the Super Bowl, and I know Drake May did not play well at all, but they did it with what we used to make fun of teams like the Eagles when they did it in 2000. What was that? 11. The dream team, they called it, and it didn't really work out. The Patriots spent huge in free agency, and they hit on tons of players, starting with the Eagles, Milton Williams, and others. This whole I'm willing to bust the budget, Jerry Jones, we used to see him do it. We used to see him spend big in free agency, and then we've gone through a period of time where that didn't happen a lot. Where do you think this thing is headed this offseason? Do you see any kind of big spending spree coming?
Yes, the Patriots were the number one spenders in free agency last year. Seattle was number 4.
Correct.
Okay, they didn't just do it by draft. They were number 4 in free agency spending. So both of these teams spent a lot. And the thing that should wake up the Cowboys is that neither one of those teams were in the playoffs last year. Seattle won. Both of them were outside the playoffs last year. The Patriots won 3 games last year or 4 games. They're in the Super Bowl the next year because it's about now. It's about winning now. It's not about building for the future and doing whatever. It's about pushing all your chips in and winning now. And will Jerry do that? He said it. He claims he's going to bust the budget. It starts with Pickens. They got to find a way to, keep Pickens in the fold, and they have him on the franchise tag. That's going to be immediately right there on the cap. $28 million right there. That limits your ability to go get other guys. So it would behoove them. If you really plan on adding players, did you sign Pickens to lower his cap figure, so you can really make moves in free agency? But yes, they have to make moves in free agency and the draft because they need several players to add a several influx of players, edge rushers, linebackers, safeties, cornerbacks, because you have a short window, right? Dak is I was in his mid-30s. It's crazy, and he just got here, and you signed to this contract. You're paying a guy $60 million. It's not about the future, it's about now. You're paying CD what you're paying to win now. You're paying those 3 defensive tackles you have, Quinn and Williams, those guys, to win now, not 3 years from now. And if you keep George Pickens, it's about winning now. And so they have to do some things. Will they do it? I don't know. Is Jerry going to change? Is Steven going to change?
It's like you said, they seem to change their hiring process of a defensive coordinator. I don't think that's lasting change, but maybe that's but yeah, we've been around long enough to know that I don't think you can change that much. What Seattle did is they ran off the legendary head coach, and then within a couple of years they're winning a Super Bowl. That's not to say Pete Carroll was a bad coach, because he's a Hall of Fame coach. Although can you get in the Hall of Fame now? Is that it's tougher and tougher to do. By the way,
Pete Carroll's not getting in over Belichick, okay?
No, well, I don't know, man. They have it out for him, and as long as Polian and Tony Dungy and some of those Colts are hanging around, they're going to do their darndest to keep him out. Of course, Bill Polian couldn't remember how he voted. All right, so had some selective memory issues there. I've had that a couple of times in life. 34. The CD makes what 35 million a year. Pickens, where would it come in, do you think? Because it's one thing for CD to go, I'm fine with him to make more than me or whatever. It's always, then it happens and they're like, wait, what's happening here? What do you think market will dictate if they're to get something done? And to remind people on the tag, he would make somewhere in the neighborhood of like what 28 to 30, about 28 million a year. Is that right?
It's 28 million.
Okay.
So I mean, the market says 35 million
for George Pickens. Wouldn't it say more than that?
If he's on 30, free, if he's free. If he's free to go to the highest bidder, it could be 34 or more, and 30, certainly 30, more than 34, more than CD, because CD got paid 2 years ago, not this year. So the market goes up. He got paid 2 years ago, and if he's the best receiver in the market, he could compare up 35 or more. Is that what the Cowboys want to do? Is that what the Cowboys should do when they need to go after a pass rush? Maybe put that 35 million on Max Crosby.
They also have an issue at left tackle. What they got to decide, how to do that on offense. Everybody wants to act like they've got the greatest offense ever, and they actually have questions over there. But you and I both know they need to take a ton of people on defense, and we'll see how they build this thing. Did you on the Hall of Fame, what the Woodson thing? I hate it. Obviously we've known him for a long time, and he's a great guy, and he was an unbelievable player. But honestly, it's becoming harder and harder to get in, because even if he gets on that ballot as a older guy like Roger Craig, maybe they'll change the voting and maybe that'll help. But what's holding that back? Is it just this influx of younger players, and that's who's getting in? What do you? I mean, because obviously the credentials and everything you should need are there for Darren Woodson. What do you think's holding him out of this thing? Just the voters, I guess, is the simple way to answer that.
It frustrates me because who the GM with the 49ers used to be with Tampa.
Lynch.
Lynch can't hold Woodson's jockstrap. He's in, right?
Yeah.
Lynch can't hold Woodson and Josh Crowd. Let's be honest about that. Why is Lynch in? And you can't get Woodson in. And, there's a number of guys, who are in and Woodson's not in. You're talking about a 3-time Super Bowl champ. You're talking about, one of the, best players of his time. You're talking about the leading tackler uh in Cowboys history. You're talking about, people forget that those Super Bowl teams in the 90s, their defense was better than offense. I know the triplets got all the attention, but they have the number one defense in the league. And there's nobody on that team, homegrown defender, that's in the Hall of Fame. Dion was there for 1 year. And Dion didn't get in the Hall of Fame because of his, time with the Cowboys. I mean, one Super Bowl, I'm saying. Charles Haley's on there, but no one else. Somebody should represent. They keep trying to put all these damn Steelers in. They want to put all these 49ers in, and you don't put the Cowboys in. And I think that Woodson certainly should represent the defense. I think Nate Newton should be there representing that offensive line. There's nobody on the Cowboys offensive line was the foundation of that offense and those teams. And nobody in the offensive line is begging to get in, not even in the Ring of Honor, which is crazy to me. But yeah, it blows my mind because Woodson's such a nice guy and he didn't create waves and he wasn't controversial and people overlooked him. They overlooked him when he was a player and they're overlooking him now. And he is a bona fide Hall of Famer.
You bring up a good point. Did the triplets, just because of who they were and their huge personalities, and did they kind of overshadow Woodson? And it's like we all think Witten should eventually get in, but it would feel very weird for Witten to get in before Woodson. But again, they put the triplets in the Ring of Honor before a lot of the old guys. Part of that was because Jerry and Jimmy were a part of that. But I mean, and they put Woodson in the thought is you put a guy in a Ring of Honor and that hopefully that helps his Hall of Fame case. And Woody's been in the Ring of Honor now for what, 8 years? I mean, it's been a good long while.
Started in the Ring of Honor because Everson Walls should be in the Ring of Honor, Harvey Martin should be in the Ring of Honor, Ed Tuthall Jones should be in the Ring of Honor. Don't even get me started on that.
Well, yeah, and we don't even want to look at those numbers of some of the guys that are because they don't really compare to the modern. But I mean, Everson's numbers are without dispute.
And Harvey Martin, without dispute, Harvey Martin still has his 23 sacks. What is the sack record? But they didn't count sacks back then.
I know, and sadly, Harvey's not around, and I'm afraid that doesn't. I mean, anyway, that's very frustrating. And people would add others to your list. People would add Charlie Waters, but I agree with you. And they would try to poke holes in Tuthall by saying he stepped away to box for a while, but he was still massive, And again, they finally dealt with those guys from the 70s, didn't they? With Cliff and Rayfield and those guys, but they've got more work to do. Okay, you're just that horrible. That was not a fun game to watch unless you just love defense. Seattle was incredible. Your thought, did Drake May, golly, to have an incredible year and almost win the MVP, like how much of a hit did his reputation take, not only from how he played in that game, but just this whole postseason to have such an unbelievable year? I mean, still a great young quarterback, but dang, he did not land it, did he?
The good news is a young quarterback, second year. He has been the opportunity. If he gets back there, we'll forget. We forgot that Ben Roethlisberger had a horrible first Super Bowl. Horrible. Of course, that team won because the defense won. But it happened. He has a chance to get back there. That left tackle, they've been murdering him. That Will Campbell guy, he's gonna have to see some sports psychology after the way he got murdered on Twitter yesterday. Of course, he gave up 14 pressures and 6 sacks or whatever he gave up. And everybody talks about his short arms going back to college, and he didn't play well. But yeah, it wasn't a fun game to watch. But I figured Seattle would win. And let's be honest, if you're watching the game, we all figured whoever won the NFC was going to win the Super Bowl, no matter what. Even going into the AFC Championship game, Rams or Seahawks were going to win the Super Bowl because The AFC has been down. It was down this year. Let's be honest, it was down this year. And the Patriots got there because they played a backup quarterback played against the backup quarterback in the championship game. It wasn't like they weren't tested like Seattle was, who had to go through a strong division in the NFC West and what they had to deal with. So it was a bad game, but it wasn't not a surprising outcome because most people pick Seattle.
Maybe Jerry can take pride in getting players ready to win Super Bowls. DeMarcus Ware, DeMarcus Lawrence. Maybe Micah can go win one now for the Packers. You got to leave to go win one.
Green Bay's going to be tough next year. They get Tucker Kraft back and they get Micah back and they, somehow, find some more players on offense. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be, we're never leaving the Jerry Micah conversation and those guys, because that's going to be right front and center. Of course, the Cowboys play in Green Bay next year, as well as playing in Rio. You going to Rio? You coming to Rio with me?
Meredith last night, and Meredith, I've brought her on a few trips before. Maybe you've scolded me a time or two, but you love my wife, and sure. I think that she's mentioned that, so we may be up for that. A trip to Rio. How would Jerry say it? De Janeiro. I don't know how he would say it, but yeah, and Jerry has a lot of car dealerships over there. Does that seem like a headache to you to go over there, or does that sound fun to you?
It's a long flight, so it's going to be a headache. But yeah, it's something we've never been before. I always, the beautiful thing about covering the Cowboys, and I've gotten to go places I never would have dreamed of going. And it's a little small town guy from Schulenburg, Texas, population 2,500, Central Texas, Schulenburg Shorthorns. Grew up with a class of 46 people. Never would have dreamed I'd be going to Tokyo or London or Rio, and every major city, everything across the United States for work, covering the Cowboys, covering something that I've been watching since I was a childhood, watching Brent Musburger say, "You're looking live," and looking at Tony Dorsett and Roger Staubach. So, again, as I started, every job has a versatility. Travel can have its issues, but I'm going to love going to Rio if I get to go.
Yeah, I've talked to DLLS. They are saving right now, so that you'll have a good trip over there. By the way, did that Muschamp hire at UT? Isn't it funny? They say you can't go home. Like 20 years later, here he comes. I don't know how long it's been, maybe 15, 17 years. Were you on the deal about? I mean, it didn't seem like defense was the big issue for UT. Obviously, early this season, it was the quarterback and the offense. Are you pleased with that move, or are you still kind of like a little bit? Did you feel like that was a bit of a head scratcher to fire that Pete?
It was a head scratcher because the defense was pretty good, and it was not the problem. But if he's better, and they're going to get better, then there's nothing wrong with improving all areas, and never get complacent. And maybe this is Sark. I've done a great job. We got top 10 teams, and we made it to the playoffs. But that's not the goal. I want to get better. And if Muschamp makes him better, Coach Boom, as they say, he was supposed to be the coach in waiting years ago. He can come full circle and bring it home. That's great.
The coach in waiting rarely works, does it? It's not even Stoops. They had Lincoln Riley, and when they said that privately, Stoops, I think, said, "They can have it right now. If y'all want to name a coach in waiting, I'm out." Mac didn't have any. He didn't want to leave that. He loved his job. He didn't really want to have a coach in waiting. Clarence, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. DLLS. You can subscribe. You can see all of Clarence's stories and videos. And then I know you'll have a ton of stuff in the off season. I appreciate you doing this, especially.
We're headed to the combine. We're going to have a whole team at the combine. So keep up with us.